There's some pretty weird symptoms associated with a vitamin D deficiency that I'd like to share with you, but maybe I should have used a better word than weird symptoms. These are symptoms that you wouldn't think are associated with a vitamin D deficiency, and there's research behind each one. I'm going to put all that information down below. As you probably already know, vitamin D is so important, and I think most people do know it's associated with bone loss, bone pain, low immune system, depression, high blood pressure, more inflammation if you're deficient, asthma, especially in children, as well as poor sleep. But there are 23 additional symptoms that you probably had no idea were connected to a vitamin D deficiency. Let's go through them. So nightmares. Now, typically nightmares are related to a vitamin B1 deficiency, but a vitamin D deficiency can also produce the manifestation of a nightmare. Number 2, restless leg syndrome. This too is usually a B1 deficiency because someone's consuming too many carbohydrates, but it can also be a vitamin D deficiency as well. And interestingly enough, I used to have restless leg syndrome, and probably because of all the sugar I was eating, was not only depleting vitamin B1, but vitamin D as well. And then number 3, we have acne, the sebaceous gland that is involved in acne, especially if it's inflamed or causing some type of obstruction so the oil can't get out of this gland, could also easily stem from a vitamin D deficiency. Number 4, bipolar. There's been quite a few studies related to someone having bipolar, and they're always deficient in vitamin D. And we know how important vitamin D is in mood disorders, especially depression, and other mood disorders, including bipolar. Number 5 is a skipped heartbeat, okay, because of the direct connection with a vitamin D deficiency and what it can do to the heart, but it can definitely affect the pacemaker of the heart. So you can start off having like a skip beat and then a palpitation, and maybe even worse, develop even arrhythmias, okay, and even atrial fibrillation. There's also certain breathing disorders related to a vitamin D deficiency that go beyond just asthma. But as you might know, like a lot of pneumonia and lung infections are related to a vitamin D deficiency because of the immune system being weak and then making you susceptible to viruses. But wheezing is definitely a symptom of a vitamin D deficiency. If you have a child, a newborn that is wheezing or making this weird breathing sound, suspect a vitamin D deficiency. In fact, anything related to breathing, including sleep apnea, make sure that person is getting enough vitamin D. Now, skin disorders are another big one, especially psoriasis and eczema. Now, psoriasis is an autoimmune problem, and any autoimmune problem is usually involving the immune system and a vitamin D deficiency associated with that. In fact, that's the best remedy for any autoimmune problem is taking larger amounts of vitamin D3, at least 50,000 IUs. I would also add in there making sure that the person is eating very, very clean, like with the healthy keto, and doing a lot of intermittent fasting because the problem with autoimmune is inflammation. So if you want to reduce inflammation, vitamin D and fasting are the two most important things. Another thing that's related to a vitamin D deficiency is sinus issues, especially in children. Give them more vitamin D or get them exposed to the sun. Hay fever in adults and children is associated with a vitamin D deficiency. If your infant has this rapid breathing, okay, and I already mentioned breathing with wheezing, but a rapid breathing situation, suspect a vitamin D deficiency. And one of the challenges, if a mother is breastfeeding the infant, there's not usually a lot of vitamin D in breast milk unless that mother is getting more sun or taking vitamin D or consuming foods higher in vitamin D. Vitamin D is a very common deficiency with women who are carrying a baby, as well as when they're breastfeeding, because of how much the body is being tapped into their reserves when feeding the child breast milk. So vitamin D is so important in your prenatal as well as during your period of time of breastfeeding. This next one is interesting because it's also associated with a lot of children that have recurrent tonsillitis or very enlarged tonsils. Give them more vitamin D. And there are certain types of vitamin D that come in a liquid that you can use that are easy to give a small infant or a child. Just put it in their liquids. And then another one that's associated with children is structural, developmental problems. So I'm talking about flat feet, bowed legs, scoliosis, kyphosis, which is hunchback, or swayed back, which is lordosis, dental malformations with the maxillary bone up to here. If the child's jaws are not correct, or there's an overbite or an underbite, or there's just some problem with the teeth that you need a dentist to correct, an orthodontist to correct, suspect a vitamin D deficiency. Number 13, long COVID, where a person has fatigue. That can be either a B1 deficiency or a vitamin D deficiency. Number 14, early puberty. You have this early development that shouldn't be happening at a certain age. Suspect a vitamin D deficiency. Now, that's also associated with certain endocrine disruptors in the environment, chemicals in the environment, but that's for a different video. Number 15, uterine fibroids. Apparently, in one study, these fibroids were halted or stopped when the group consumed 50,000 IUs of vitamin D3. Here's another one, irregular menstrual cycles. Now, who doesn't have a problem with that? A female is 13.3 times more likely to have irregular menstrual cycles when they are deficient in vitamin D. A longer cycle is also associated with a low vitamin D. There's a 7.8 times more likelihood for that cycle to go longer if there is deficient vitamin D. Urinary incontinence, 3 times more likely if you're deficient in vitamin D. There was one study in older Black women that related to this. And they also noted that the group that took like 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3 didn't see any improvement in this urinary problem. So you have to take more, at least 10,000 IUs. Vertigo is also associated with a low vitamin D because a certain type of vertigo is really a calcium crystal building up on the inside of your ear, and that's interfering with the little hairs that are associated with your equilibrium. And taking enough vitamin D can help prevent that. But you also have to take vitamin K2 as well. In fact, anytime you take vitamin D3, also at the same time take vitamin K2 at a ratio of 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3 to 100 micrograms of vitamin K2. Sarcopenia, that is a problem of muscle loss as someone ages. You're 7.7 times more likely to develop sarcopenia if you're low in vitamin D3. Myopia usually happens when we are exposed to too much screen time, looking at the computer and not getting enough actual sun. But there's definitely an association between that condition and low vitamin D. Glaucoma. Okay, that's pressure built up in the eye. Apparently, you're twice as likely to get glaucoma if you're low in vitamin D3. And then we have number 23, erectile dysfunction. You're apparently 1.3 times more likely to develop this if you're low in vitamin D3. Of course, there's many other factors, but I'm just talking about the association between low vitamin D and all of these other conditions. Now, because of the censoring and the suppressing of the algorithms on YouTube, it's becoming more difficult to find my content. And there's a lot of content that I cannot put on YouTube, unfortunately. So to make sure you have full access of all my information, go to drberg.com and subscribe to my newsletter by clicking the link down below in the description. I will see you on the other side. Now, I've done a lot of videos on vitamin D. If you have not seen this very popular video on vitamin D3, I think you'll enjoy it. I put it up right here. Check it out.